Hey there, folks. So I found myself needing to cut some bow ties, and how do you cut bow ties without a bandsaw? Well, table saw sled. So in this video, I'll be making a really simple, quick table saw sled. So this sled is going to be really simple. It's just 3/4 inch sanded plywood. It has T-track for the runners, and there's a T-track on the top for clamping options. And that's it. This took me maybe 40 minutes to make. And you know, it's a good way to cut angles on the table saw. And in a further video, I'll be showing how I cut the bow ties on it, which was also pretty easy. Easier than I thought it was going to be. Okay, so I'm starting out with a piece of 3/4 inch birch plywood. It's 24 by 24 inches. The length was a bit long. I probably could have gotten away with about 20 inches, but this is what I went with. And I'm just going to lay it out on top of the table saw so that I can mark out the miter slots, because this is where the tracks are going to go. Okay, so for the runners, I'm just using T-track. I had it on hand. It's pretty cheap and it's easy. So I'm cutting it to 24 inches here. I know you can cut aluminum with traditional woodworking blades, but I don't know, it just makes me a little nervous. So I think this is like a 130 tooth steel blade. It's for aluminum and plywood, and it cuts the aluminum like butter. So since I have two miter boxes anyway, I just keep one metal blade and this one. Okay, here I'm just going to swap my blade out for a dado stack. And I'm going to be using the dado stack to cut a dado into the top of the sled. And that's going to be for the T-track to be recessed into so that it's flush with the top of the sled. And I can use it for clamping options. My saw really won't spin 3/4 inches of dado stack, so I'm putting like 3/8 of a stack in, and then I'm just going to make 2 passes to cut the full width of the T-track. Okay, while I'm finishing up swapping this blade out, it feels like a good time to ask for your subscription and like if you enjoy the content I'm creating. Really appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Okay, it looks like I'm setting the depth of my dado by placing the T-track on top of the table saw and bringing the blade flush with the top of it. This is the first of 2 passes to create the dado slot in the plywood. So now I'm just setting my fence for the second pass. And I believe I'm just gonna, I'm grabbing the T-slot just to double check to make sure that's the right width. Already, second pass. And now the slot is complete. There was a little sliver of wood left between the 2 passes that I'm just cleaning out. And T-track fits. So now I'm just going to use 4 pennies. I'm going to drop them in the miter slot, and then I'm going to set the T-track on top of it, and the pennies just elevated so it's higher than the surface of the table so that it makes contact with the sled. So I'm just going to drop them in, and then I've already, on my sled, I've already marked out where the track is going to hit. I'm just going to double check it here. I'm going to flip the board. Oh no, I have it right side up, so I'm just going to glue it down between the 2 lines I made. It's hard to see, but they're there. So 1, 2, and then I'm going to grab some accelerator, and I'm going to spray the T-tracks with it and then stick it down. So that's the accelerator. Move the sled out of the way, spray them down, so that it dries instantly. Drop it back down, line it up. And then what I'll do is after I pull it back up, I'll put in some 5/8 long screws. I'll drill it out and put in 5/8 long screws. The T-tracks already have screw holes in them. They came that way from Tay Tools. So I'm just pressing it on, give it, 5-10 seconds, and it's stuck on. So I'm just going to pop it out now, take a look. The fence was in the way, so I'm just moving the fence out of the way. It was binding on the fence. And there they go. So, like I said, I'll just drill those holes out and affix it with 5/8 screws. And now I'm screwing it. And then once you drop this back into your table saw, feel if there's any movement at all. The front of mine was not nice and tight, but the rear of it had a little wiggle room. So I just used some blue tape and I put them on one side of the T-track, one side of the rail of the T-track, and that was enough of a shim to keep it nice and tight. So it slides through the miter slots smoothly with no movement back and forth. Okay, just getting the last couple of screws in there. Alright, now we're gonna flip it over and give it a quick test fit. Sliding okay. This is before I put the shim, so there's a little wiggle room in the back. Okay, so now I'm just setting my T-track in the dado, and I'm marking where to cut it. It's got to be cut about 2 inches short or so. This way you have room to slide your clamp in there. Again, cutting it on the metal tooth blade on the chop box. And then back to the table to seat it in. The shortest screws I could find, number 6 wood screws, the shortest ones I could find were a 1/2 inch, which were just a hair too long. So when I flipped it over, the points were showing. So you'll see I had to grind them off. No big deal. I just used a little grinding wheel on the Dremel. Took a couple of seconds literally just to grind them off. Those are the points there. So Dremel, grind them off. You'll see the sparks flying a little. With that little grinding wheel and the Dremel made short work of it. Okay, so it operates nice and smooth now, no more grinding. And now I'm just cutting the fences for the front and the back of the sled. So I'm cutting this about 3.5 inches, I think it's going to be, and then I'm just showing here that only cutting up to that line, and then I'm leaving a little bit more in the middle where the blade passes through, just so the fence is a little stronger. And I'm going to finish this cut up with the jigsaw. I could have done the whole cut with the jigsaw, but I just thought it was easier to do the straight parts with the table saw. This way they're nice and straight. Jigsaw sometimes wanders a little bit. So now I'm just cutting the angles out and finishing the straight cut with the jigsaw. And what you do on one side, you do on the other. So just doing the other angle and the straight part. And that's taken care of. Now I'm gluing it on, just a little Type-On 3, 2, I forget which one it is. And then I'm just going to tack some finish nails in there, just to hold it while the glue dries. 4 or 5 finish nails is all it takes to hold it. Just don't stick one in the middle where the blade is going to cut through it. Okay, so now I'm just using my framing square to square the sled to the table saw blade. This is going to be the side that you push your work through with, so that needs to be square to the blade. Now, I know there's more accurate ways to do this. There's the 5-cut method and whatnot, but for what I'm using this sled for, squaring it to the blade is going to be plenty good for me. I don't need it any more precision than that. So holding it tight to the blade, making sure it's not hitting any of the carbide teeth, and then I just draw my line, and now I'm just sliding this square over to carry the line through to the other side. Okay, now that I have my line, I'm going to line my track saw up to it, and I'm just going to cut the end of the sled using my track saw. So, one zip. And now we should be all squared up to the blade and ready to put the push fence on. So you'll notice here in a couple of seconds, this fence, the push fence now that I'm nailing to the sled, isn't the same fence that's used in the rest of the video. Initially when I built the sled, I forgot to square the sled to the blade, and I made a couple of cuts and something didn't seem quite right, and it took me a few minutes of looking at it and putting a square on it till I realized that it wasn't cutting square, and I realized I forgot to square the sled to the fence. So important to square the sled to the fence. So, and also I'm screwing the push fence on because originally I nailed it the first time. I nailed it and glued it, and then I had to knock it off. And then I thought, you know what? I might have to change this fence every once in a while because it's going to have a lot of curve cuts cut through it, you know, when I change angles and whatnot. So screwing it might be better for future replacement. All right, so now I'm just sticking a board on there to give my clamping option a quick test, and then I'll set up to show you how I made my little bow ties. Okay, so for the bow ties, the first thing I did was figured out how big I wanted my bow tie, and then I set my table saw blade to the halfway point. And then I drew a straight line on my fence right where the kerf of the blade starts. This way I had a reference mark to line my block up every time I switched sides. So you see I still have straight sides on my block to reference my line width on the fence. And then my blade is just set at, I think it's at a 10-degree angle, I think it was, which I thought looked nice. So I'm just cutting all 4 sides. It's pretty quick, it's pretty easy, as long as you are careful to line it up correctly on your fence. I'll probably make another video, a more detailed video on how I do this, but since I made the fence to cut the bow ties, I figured I'd just show you how I cut the bow ties. So then that little nip there, I just take it off with a chisel. And that's it. That's a bow tie on the table saw using a sled. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.